Good evening. How you doing? I'm over here messing around. I'm talking to Sue Ann, and I'm not even paying attention. I look up, it's like 3 seconds. I'm like, oh, I better push some buttons here. Anyway, how you guys doing? My name is Lee Love, and this is your first time here. We appreciate you joining us. This is the night we do photo reviews. We have a lot of good stuff tonight, by the way. Tons of really nice, great work you guys have submitted. Appreciate it. And again, if this is your first time here and you made a mistake and probably meant to click on Martha's knitting channel, which is right next to ours, and hit us by mistake, well, hang around anyway. You might learn a thing or two. We always have a lot of fun here. Like I said, we got a bunch of images, probably more. I think we have the most images you guys have submitted so far, and I appreciate that. I want to thank you guys for submitting those. I know it doesn't make sense to you. You're like, well, but it really is. Number one, I really do appreciate it. Number two, I really enjoy seeing your work. And I know some people are embarrassed or they don't think their work's good enough. And I just want to remind you guys, this is not a contest. And I really don't talk too much about what I like or dislike about these images. It's really more about you and whether you're achieving what your goal, what you're trying to do. We're trying to sell the message you're trying to tell, the story you're trying to tell. And that's really what it's all about. So we're only really competing against ourselves here, not against each other. So please don't look at this as a contest. And that's why I do this as anonymous, by the way, so not putting your watermark on it or mentioning your name, which brings up a really good point. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. What do you guys think about me having a check mark on the application when you upload your photo where you can tell me if you want it to be anonymous or not? Because a lot of people, it seems like, forget or leave a watermark on their image. I don't mind telling people who you are. I just wanted to make it easier for those of you that were new, not to be embarrassed or feel like your work's not good enough, and that's why I do it as anonymous. So anyway, it's up to you guys. Whatever you want to do. Maybe I should again put a little checkbox there, and you guys can decide whether you want to mention your names or not. So anyway. As always, I like to start off each show with a quote, and this quote is from Annie Leibovitz, and I think it sums up. I try and find something that fits the idea of photography, of course, learning to see and also improving. And her quote is, "One doesn't stop seeing, one doesn't stop framing. It doesn't turn off or on, it's on all the time." And I totally agree with this. This is really one of the things I talk about when teaching people to learn to see. You don't actually have to have a camera in front of you. So I'm always taking pictures in my head. I'll see something driving along. Wow, that's cool. Look at that. There's a place, in fact, near here. I keep thinking I want to go back and photograph a model in there. And of course, they keep changing it and clearing it. And the next thing I know, I'm going to wait. It's going to go by. It's not going to be there anymore. But anyway, the idea is that you want to keep looking for those places. You want to keep looking at the light, studying it, learning. You don't need a camera to do that. And that's what she's really trying to talk about, is learning to see and seeing all the time. That's how you become a better photographer. Okay. Again, if this is your first time here, real quick, I want to make sure you guys realize that the images that I look at are rated, or not rated, but just my feedback or input is really based on two components. Three actually. One is, how well they use the 7 elements of art. If you're not familiar with this is, of course, line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. And these are the elements that you'll find in every piece of artwork. They may not all be there, but one piece of art has these in there. And the reason is these are tools we use to convey something to our audience, to say something to the viewer. I'll go in a little more in detail on this in a little bit later. But I'll try and bring these up. When I look at your photos, this is what I'm looking for here, how well it addresses these issues. The second thing is composition, of course, and that it has to do with, of course, where the framing is of the image. Is it busy? Is it, does it make sense? So here's what happens with a lot of work, and this is why I harp on this so much. When you're looking at an image, it is our job as a photographer to guide, and as an artist in general, to guide the viewer, to tell them what we want them to look at and why it's important to them. I call this the hero of the shot. You'll hear me refer to that. And that's what composition does. It draws the eye to where we want them to see. A lot of times, the biggest mistake or the biggest improvement people can make in their work is really just learning a little bit more about composition and using white space, rule of thirds, those kinds of things. Anyway, to make my point, and this kind of goes back to the 7 elements of art, I want to give you a quick example. Photography is very much like writing. If you're a writer, okay, there are things that you need to know about writing, right? You learn about the language you're writing in. We'll call it English language. You learn about verbs, nouns, and punctuations, and all these things have meaning, right? There's a reason for them, because without that, it doesn't make sense to somebody. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So this is a quote from a very famous speech that was made, and if you know anything about history, you probably could figure it out by looking at it. But these are words that are part of the sentence. But if you try and read them, they don't make sense. It's like silly. It's just gibberish. And the reason it's gibberish is because they're not placed in the proper order. So if we look at this, is the actual sentence, and of course this is from the Gettysburg Address that Lincoln made 77 years ago. But if you look at the exact same words out of order, without the right punctuation and without the right use of English language, they don't make sense. It's just gibberish. And this is what I'm trying to get across to you when I critique or look at your images and give you feedback, is what is you trying to tell me? What is in that story? That's what I refer to as visual grammar or visual language. And that is, so the more you learn about the 7 elements of art, and the more you learn about composition, the more you're able to use these words or these tools to be able to communicate what you want to your audience. So this is just a simple example I came up with to show you the difference using, because we're all familiar with the English language, or most of us, of course. Although my wife says sometimes I speak Linglish, not English. And those of you who watch this probably know that. Anyway, so the point is that if you don't understand these terms, you don't understand how to put them together in the order that they should go in, or what they mean, then you're not going to get across your message to your viewer. So let's just pick one, for example, lines. Okay, lines is a very common one. It's obviously in every image. You're going to see this a lot in the images I look at tonight. And a line generally can be a horizontal line, a vertical line, a diagonal line, but those all mean different things. There's different meaning to them. So for example, a horizontal line is generally stability. A vertical line, to the human brain, whether we like it or not, tends to denote strength. Skyscrapers, verticals. Also, there's some religious overtones to it. And horizontal lines tend to make people a little bit nervous, kind of a thing. Squiggly lines, in other words, if you notice, like I always like to think of cartoon characters. They hit the guy, pow, wow, all right, those old cartoons we used to watch. Well, if you look, they always had squiggly lines and crazy lines that always meant that kind of were trying to display in a comic turmoil or some kind of action, right? And that's exactly the same with it. So when you look at these lines, squiggly lines mean things differently than vertical lines or horizontal lines. So anyway, I'm not going to go into too much of that more tonight, but I will. I have covered that in other videos, and I'm going to cover it in future ones as well, again, because it's so important. So anyway, that is the deal on that. Okay, so let's get into this because we've got a lot of images tonight. Like I said, probably more than we ever had. The first one is an image. Let's see if we've got this right here. Yes, an image by, we'll call her S. She didn't leave her last name, so I don't know what her last initial is or first initial. So let's use S. And this is an image that they captured actually on vacation, sunset, of course, and at Kennebunkport. And it's kind of an interesting photo. Personally, I'm not a big fan of sunsets, and the reason is they've kind of been overdone. Unless it's really dramatic and there's some other element in there, they don't really say a whole lot. So again, this is kind of an interesting one here. But if you look at the way this works, the sunset is okay. It's impressive. It's not that impressive. But what's more interesting is the fact that they use the foreground to draw your eye, and that's what makes the part of this image sort of work. Now there's some rule of thumb people kind of use about horizontal lines and about here, I'll show you. Let's see if I can bring this in here. Yeah, so some people will say you shouldn't have a vertical line, or you shouldn't have your horizon right in the middle, and that can be possibly true or not. But it depends on what you're trying to do, okay, and what you're trying to say. So that could be an issue there. Generally, most people will not put that there. So what you're trying to do with your horizontal or your skyline here is you're trying to set it up to be what's most important. Is the foreground more important or the sky more important? Now, again, this can vary. It's not always. It's not a cut in stone kind of thing. Having it in the middle is exactly fine. But what you'll see is if you do something like this, it changes the image considerably, doesn't it? So now you've got this foreground, or that's the kind of the major part of the image, and the sky is important, but it's not as dominant. And also by putting the horizon at the 1/3 level of the image, it tends to make it a little stronger. So I would say that's the issue there. This foreground is really nice. If you take it out, it really doesn't. I don't think it works as well. So if you go the other way and you reduce the foreground and you make the rule of thirds where this way, I think it loses a lot. Unless there's a lot more going up here in the sky. But I think that the fact that you I think her name is Sarah actually. So Sarah, I think the fact that you did this, the way you framed this, is pretty good. I would probably suggest, though, you might consider bringing this down a little bit and cropping it maybe just a little bit here. I think it makes it a little stronger. If you were to really get into some processing stuff, you could get into, really bringing up the levels and that kind of stuff if you really wanted to get into that part of it. But we won't. That's not something I'm going to cover here tonight. But anyway, and then the way I would do this, by the way, just so you know, is I would take and I would mask this. I wouldn't do everything. Just so you guys know how this would work. So then I would take a brush with black, and I would mask. Whoops, didn't mask the right part there. Yeah, I would mask this the sky and bring it back down to where it was before, but I would leave the lightning part up on the rocks. So you can come over here in this rocks part. now that you've masked the sky's not going to be adjusted at all, and so now you have a little more control over how you want to bring where you want, if the rocks are important, of course. I think in this case they are, because they draw the viewer to the sky. Now these cars are a little distracting, but that's a whole nother issue. So I think it's, anyway, hopefully that helps you a little bit understand what I'm talking about here. Okay, let's see, the next image, let's see what we've got. I think the next one is also same image. And this one is also the sunset, but this one is a little more interesting in my opinion because of the color and the framing. Also, you don't have the distraction of the cars over to the right, so you just have, but this, now what's happening is, let's see if I can find this image, yeah. So now what's happening is you have this, the boats here and the curve of the shoreline are kind of drawing the person in a little more to. So now you have this here, where this is kind of drawing the viewer in here. So makes it a little more interesting, right? You got the skyline, and so this one's I think working a little better. Also, if you look, you have less sky and more foreground. So this one has more possibilities. But you've got a good eye here in the way you're doing these and the way you're seeing these. So this is not a criticism on that part of it. I think this is a stronger image, and it certainly makes it more interesting to me than the first one does. Okay, so appreciate that. Really appreciate you guys submitting this stuff. Okay, now this next series is an interesting one. This one is submitted by MD, and I should mention, by the way, that S has been shooting for 5 years or more. MD's also been shooting for 5 years. And this is why I appreciate you guys giving me a little bit of backstory so I know what's going on. But there wasn't much backstory here. It was just a very casual anniversary shoot. So here's a good example of what I'm talking about when I talk about composition and headroom. Okay, whoops, so let's go back. So here, I think this is it here. Nope, wrong one. Can't see here because of the stupid light. And also they're not in order for some reason. Hang on here, sorry about that. Let me find the right image and then I will bring it up to you. Whoops, cancel. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. So this is the image here. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about, where I'm talking about telling the viewer where you want them to look. This is a nice image, and by the way, I think on the other ones I'm going to show you, you've done a much better job. But so here's an idea where you've got all this headroom at the top, and it's really kind of, you can use, it's white space is what it's called, okay? It's just blank space to be able to, and you can use that to your advantage. But in this particular case, I don't think it works. It does the opposite. It draws the eye up top, and look how much of the room, how much room this uses of the image. So we're like staring up here, going, "Well, is this important? Is there something up here I'm supposed to see?" Also, looks like there's a watermark that I missed. Okay, but that makes it a much stronger image. Of course, you kind of cropped a little bit here. I make it a little bit looser, but good emotion, which is nice. The emotion will always trump anything else. If you've got some emotion and they can express that, you can draw the viewer into that image, then it works. And I think this works for that. So anyway, so just by taking out all of that headroom, I think you make this a much stronger image, MD. Now, also, I will tell you guys, a lot of you guys broke the rules on this one. but that's okay. So some of you guys submitted 4 images instead of 3, and that's all right. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on that, but because I really do appreciate you. So, and that's so MD's got a couple images here. Okay, so here's another one. This again, now this one is different because the headroom works. So, and the reason it works is because you framed it. You got that literally an A-frame above them, and so it puts them in there, and that really makes the image work much better. I think you could also, I think this one could have been cropped a little bit, but it's certainly not as an issue with where the other one was, where you had all that that headroom. So I'm trying to find my images here. I didn't realize I was not going to be able to see because of these lights in my eyes. Oh, well. Okay, so anyway, I think this one is really nice, and the other one, they get better as like we go. I think you're doing a pretty good job. So this works. Because the headroom works is what I'm trying to tell you, because it draws the viewer to that the subject, which is where you're trying to get them to look. And if you look at it this way, you can say the form or space is what the elements that are working in this particular photo, and because that A-frame is drawing the viewer to where you want them to go. So anyway, this is a pretty good image as well. Okay, another one, same thing, a little better pose, but again, my point is, look at the emotion here. They obviously care about each other. It's showing off in the photo, and you could maybe crop this a little tighter to draw this up to the right to them a little faster, but the emotion really works for these images, and nice job on these. So, this one is a little not quite as strong. It might be one where you would consider doing the opposite, maybe. In other words, what I would suggest on something like this might be, because again, now you can use the height there, the stuff at the top to help, but on this one, what I would have suggested is maybe you consider the opposite. What I would have thought would have been a little more effective would have been to do it this way, but create more foreground. Okay, so you could basically go in and draw the what's called leading lines, where you now draw the viewer into the image this way. Okay, so, and you can do that by using this foreground. So if you'd included a little more foreground there, and okay, you could have made that a little bit stronger image. Use these lines here on the side. These are also very powerful in drawing the viewer to where you want them to look. So anyway, but again, not bad. The other two I think a little stronger though, but again, you might want to have him put his hand up here on a pose, up on her arm, so he doesn't look quite so out of the picture, so to speak, is what I'm trying to say, where he's not quite as engaged, where I think if his right hand would have been up on her elbow or on her arm, that would have looked a little nicer too. Anyway, good job on these. Thank you very much. I appreciate, and I'm so glad you decided to include them and submit them. So thank you very much. Keep them coming, man. I really, your work's getting better. I remember you did some stuff earlier, and I think these are even stronger than the ones you submitted last time. Okay. Now, one thing I want to remind you guys of, this is a good example of where when we're submitting our work, we have this work and we're always posting it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's hard to get noticed, right? And so one of the things that I did to try and help you guys is I created a whole set of frames that you can put the images into. You can show them to your clients this way. There's also a way to put your signature on the mat if you wanted to. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. I think this is, let's see here.
Let me guess. You post photo after photo on social media, but you hear nothing but crickets. With millions of photos being posted daily on social media, it can be tough to make even the best images stand out. This is why Photo Mentor created over 40 custom graphic frames that quickly transform your ordinary photos into extraordinary ones. These frames are free and include portrait, landscape, and square designs to match any style. They're super easy to use and will add a professional touch to your images in no time. Whether a beginner or a pro, these frames will elevate your work and make you stand out from the crowd. Don't settle for posting ordinary-looking photos. Download these custom Photo Mentor frames and display your photos as pieces of art. Visit photomentoracademy.com/frames to download your free Photo Mentor frames.
Okay, so anyway, again, check those out. I think you'll find them very handy. There's a whole bunch of them in there. Like I said, there's portrait, landscape. There's even some that are transparent, so if you want, you can put the frame over top of your image. What I didn't mention in there is also I created some tutorials for you, some video tutorials on how to use these. One is using Canva, which is a free product, a website. You don't have to pay anything or sign up or anything, which is, you know, so you can use that to put your images in these frames. And if you don't want to do that, also, I've recorded one. I got to finish it. I'm sorry. On Photoshop, you can how to use Photoshop as well as Affinity Photo, which is a really nice image product as well. So if you like doing that, then I would suggest you check those out. And again, it's free, no problem. And I think you guys will enjoy that. But definitely amps up your stuff a little bit, makes it look a little better. Okay, let's see here. We have, okay, so the next image is by HJ, and HJ is interesting. Their work is fantastic, but they're hesitant to submit stuff, and I don't know if I think they think it's not good enough. I don't know what the deal is, but you know, their work is amazing and it's inspiring, and I hope you guys will feel the same way when you see this stuff. So this is the first image that HJ did, and of course I see that now I've messed up because I didn't hang on here. See, I guess it doesn't really matter. Heck with it. But this is just a beautiful image, and one of the things they told me about it was that they said, let's see if I can get my notes here. Lost my cursor. Too many monitors. Okay. That it was just a smoky, kind of hazy sunrise, and they loved the lone pelican, and I thought this was just a beautiful, beautiful image. Really works. There's a good example, by the way, when people tell you, you know, I'm talking about composition, right? And so I'm telling you about putting things in the middle. That's okay. It's okay to put it in the middle if it works. And to me, the pelican in the middle works. Your eye's drawn right to it. It's beautiful. It's just a gorgeous image. And of course, the way they finished it, I assume, in a little bit of post-processing, but still, it's just a beautiful image. So HJ, thank you very, very much for submitting this. It's just wonderful. The next one they submitted is also equally beautiful, and HJ says they're struggling with lighting, which of course, as most of you guys know, it's my forte, and the thing I love most about photography is lighting. Once lighting started clicking for me, it changed my entire career, and I think it'd do the same for you as well, or even just as a hobby. But this is a light painting project where they're starting to do some still life and just light painting. Apparently they said this is just from a window light, natural light. And HJ, I'd love to talk to you about this. I'm going to reach out to you on this one, because you said that for some reason the shadows aren't right for you, and I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. So I can find the original here. Because I think the shadows definitely work on this. The trick is, and maybe what's throwing you off here, is that if you look at, so shadows are an interesting thing, but they tell you a lot about a photo. So if you look at the shadow here on this egg or object here versus the shadow over here, one of the differences you'll see is this is a much more dramatic or drastic, it's falling off faster than this one is. Well, the reason it's doing that is because of where the light is placed and the object in reference to that. So this one over here is closer to the light, and this one over here is further away from the light. And so therefore, that's why the shadow on this one is a little harsher or falls off a little more dramatically in these. Maybe that's what's throwing you off. I don't know. But I got to tell you, this is just a gorgeous, gorgeous image, and it really, the texture, again, it hits all these points, right? It hits shape, it hits form, it hits space, it hits texture, and it hits value. Value being, of course, the difference in grays, showing from pure black at what's called would be 0 on Lightroom or Photoshop, and 255, which is pure white. So this image is just gorgeous, and there's nothing to be ashamed of in this one. Just really, really nice. So I'm not sure what issues you're having with shadows, but I'd love to talk to you about it. And be sure, and if you reach out to me and let me know what's going on, I'll be glad to help you with it. So anyway, really thank you very much for submitting this one. It's when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's just beautiful. So thanks. All right, so the next one, let's see what we got next. Okay, the next one is from, I think this is from MB, if I'm not mistaken. Can't tell here. Sorry, too many of these pictures here. I think it is. I think MB, or maybe I got it mixed up. Let me look here. Sorry, I want to make sure I got this right. So, oh yeah, I think this one, because I know the initials were the same. Anyway, I'm not sure. I apologize if I got it wrong. Anyway, so they're, I think this is where they're trying, they're working with a 14mm lens for the first time. And this is just, I love this image. It's really nice. So here's an example of where, again, using the leading lines I was talking about. Okay, let's see if I can find. I tell you what I should do is close some of these that I don't need anymore. That might make it a little easier for me to find. Sorry. Yeah, what you guys can't tell, what you guys can't see here, is I got this light in my eyes. Here, I can turn this off while you're. Let me see here for a second. I can close these windows now. Okay. This one we don't want. Okay, this one we've done. Really nice stuff, you guys. Apologize, I'm sorry. Feel weird. Okay, here we go. Don't save that one. Nice one on that one. Where is this darn picture? Oh, well. All right. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. It's still a great image, and so I think it's shot with a 14mm. I think this is the one you were playing with, and I apologize if I got it wrong. But anyway, just so here's what works by this image. Number one, the leading line. Oops, turn the light back on. The leading lines, okay, so it's drawing your eye right to the center of the frame, which is fine. The composition is really nice because you've got a lot on the bottom. Is that it? Okay, good. Yeah. So the bottom is really nice because it's taking up as much of the room as you need. So in other words, it's leading the person into the center of the image. The top, of course, having the color or the top of the image there with the color, the flat or the umbrellas reflecting in the water. You can't go wrong with water. I mean, I'm telling you, it just looks great. So, and I see that Sue-Ann. Let me see, Sue-Ann. Make sure you set that to send that to the queue. That may be the problem. I'm not sure on why that's not showing up. Anyway, beautiful image, works, definitely works, and nice job on this one. So, Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is also the 14 millimeter, and again, you know, with a lens that wide, I like the 14. By the way, I've got one a 14 to 24 Nikon lens that I use that I never thought I would use when I bought it, but boy, is it sharp, and it's really a great lens. You can use it to draw, again, as you did in the first one there, draw people's attention. But if you hold it level, what you'll find is it won't distort as much. But if you tilt it, you can exaggerate it. So sometimes you'll do that on purpose. If you're trying to draw attention to something in the foreground, if you'll tilt it a little bit or tilt it up or down, you'll see that it'll exaggerate. So it's a really nice lens, and you can do a lot with it. So here's a point about this, is that this is a great example of where when you get a lens, or if you have a lens you haven't shot in a while, put it on your camera and only shoot with that lens for at least a week, maybe 2. And the reason is, what will happen is you'll start to pre-visualize what that lens is going to look like and where those images work. And so then you start seeing, okay, in your head, wow, this is where that 14 would really do well. And that's before you even take your camera out of the bag, because you now understand what that field of view looks like, and how that 14 or whatever, it could be a 50 millimeter, doesn't matter. But if you learn that ahead of time, you're pre-visualizing before you ever pull that lens out of the bag of what it's going to look like. So I encourage you to take each one of your lenses and just play with them. Shoot a week or 2 with just that one lens, like a 50 millimeter prime, for example. Put that on your camera and only shoot with that. And what you'll do is you'll start to then find subjects that work with that lens, and therefore the next time you're seeing something and you come across a subject, go, that would really work with the 50 or the 14 or whatever lens it is. Okay. Again, this one is the 14 millimeter. It's not as strong an image, of course, because there's a lot going on, and so that's the problem with this. So I don't know what you're trying to tell us and where you want me to look, but it definitely is a pretty wide angle view. It's an interesting view, but it's a little busy, and I don't know what you're trying to tell me. The other ones are very clear what you're trying to say. This one is a little different. So, okay, so this one is from. Let me see here. This is JK. Did I submitted this one? I think this is the same lens. Maybe, I'm not sure. Hope I didn't get these wrong. Anyway, they were walking their dog. There was walking the dogs and the cats with the light hit the sausage dog perfectly. They said, being old and slow, was able to get a decent shot of him. Yeah, you can see that gray in that face, and you know he's looks like he's kind of a mix, but pretty good job on this one actually. I like to see a little more of that. It'd be nice to see a little more of the angle the other way, but the profile's nice. It's interesting. Again, on something like this, what would be nice is if you were to crop it a little more this way. Well, I guess this way if you're looking at this screen, but more with their nose up against the frame. It kind of crowds a little bit, and that's okay. That's a great way, by the way, to generate tension if you're trying to make something look suspenseful. But obviously they're looking off to one side, and it kind of makes us curious. What are they looking at? So by having a little bit, this is where, again, using the item of space there on number 4 would be beneficial, because if you're using space over on that left side of the frame, now you're drawing your viewer to the dog's face, where because there's so much on the right hand side, it's not, you know, it wouldn't be that interesting. So I would say if you have one framed the other way, that would also be a good way to do it. So frame a little more to the right, so that you have more, the dog's nose is not quite up to the edge of the frame, and see what that looks like. Okay, so this next one is a really nice image as well, and again, I appreciate you tell me this is JT. This is JT's image. They've been shooting about 3 or 4 years, and what they said is they wanted to get in touch with their client's vision of telling a story about a dancer in the 1940s. And I think you nailed it. I think you totally nailed this. It's nice. It's not straight on. It's different. It's from the back, but yet we still know she's a dancer. And it looks vintage, so I think that works as well. And so it's a very interesting image, and I think you've done a really good job on this one. So I'd love to see what else you have from this series, because I imagine there's some other really nice images in here. So also, don't be afraid to, don't be afraid to, use that depth of field. So in other words, if they're a dancer or maybe they have like something in their hand that relate to like their shoe or something, or maybe they're kneeling down and they have the worn part of their shoe, have that in focus and them just a little bit out of focus. So that's adding to the story. So there's something I notice a lot of people don't do, and that is they don't use that background. It's really, the background can help tell that story or destroy the story. So by putting those two elements in there, you can really improve the image by having that background in there and just be slightly out of focus, and that gives you a subtle meaning. So in other words, if they were holding a shoe, a ballet shoe, in their hand, looking down on it, and the ballet shoe was a little bit forward and it was sharp, but their background, their face was a little bit out of focus, you're using two elements to tell that story. So you have that foreground, which of course tells us they're a dancer, which you wouldn't know otherwise, and then that slightly out of background focus, or the slightly background out of focus, tells another story, because you could tell them what that wearing the dance tutu or dress or whatever you want to call it would also tell part of the story. So anyway, good job on that one though. And I appreciate you sharing that. Definitely works, I think. Okay, so the next one is this is from CA. CA is a full-time professional photographer, and you can tell. What I love about this is that, and I know who this is. I've worked with them on a lot of different things, and they tell me that their biggest struggles are editing and lighting. And I'm looking at this picture going, okay, where's the problem on that? Because I think you've nailed the editing, and I think you nailed the lighting. So I'm not quite sure what your issue is, but what they did say they just wanted their work to look like art, and I think this definitely does. Definitely looks like a fine art shoot image, and it's a maternity shoot, so it's a little different than what you would normally do, and I like it. I think it works, and I think the background works. Again, on this one, you might not put them right in the center. You might be able to crop that one a little bit to draw, so it's not quite so obvious. I can find that picture here in my editor. Can't believe I can't. I closed them. Anyway, so what you could do is you could just crop that a little bit on the right-hand side, bring that a little stronger, but it works the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. So again, I'd also watch that headroom. A little bit of headroom there, and so it might be a little too much. So you might consider bringing that down a little bit. Again, it's okay the way it is, but if you were to drop that headroom down a little bit, then my eye would go directly to her face as opposed to this empty space above their head. So anyway, nice job, CA, and I don't think you have anything to worry about on your editing or your lighting. I know it's a struggle. It's always a struggle. And it's never perfect because we're always working to get there. But anyway, I think you did an excellent job on this one. Something you should be real proud of. I'm sure the client liked it as well. Okay, this one here, this is kind of an interesting, a little bit different for us. This is submitted by JP. JP has been shooting about 3 to 4 years. And the description is: a spring shower appeared out of the blue. It's a particularly vicious downpour. I happened to duck under a construction awning, staring right at the undercover subway entrance. Whipped out my camera, captured this poor guy walking slowly toward the subway entrance and getting totally soaked. It's gorgeous. Yeah, it's a really nice image, and I just love it. He just really nice job on this one. Obviously, the saturation, the color's a little over the top, but that's okay. It makes it work. The composition is perfect on this one, in my opinion. It looks like a painting, of course, which is your goal, I'm sure. And but see, if you'd have put them in the center, then it wouldn't have worked as well, because by having that space on the right, you now gave them something to walk into, to have the viewer know what's going on. By putting them on the left-hand side, then you really draw us right to that, because there's nothing really going on the right-hand side. Again, this would be another situation of what I'm talking about, where space, using that empty space to help tell that story, and that's sort of on the right-hand side there. And just an excellent job. Good job on this one. I applaud you for this one. It's also, I really like the highly saturated colors, but I try and tell you guys I don't like to tell you what I like and don't like. I just think the picture works, because it's not about whether I like it or not. It's about whether the image works. So let me look at something real quick, Sue Ann here. I don't know why this isn't working. I know you're trying to bring up some. Let me look here real quick. Huh. Let me see here. Sorry about that. We're trying to. Let me see here. See how this. Nope, that isn't it. I didn't know it either. Oh. See if this one does it. Nope. I don't know what's going on, Sue Ann. Weird. Should be working. It is not for some reason. Oh well. Technology, ain't it grand? Oh well. All right. Let me close this down here. Always something, right? Okay. So anyway, really nice job on this one. As I said there, this was submitted by JP. Thanks very much. Again, thank you guys so much for submitting these. These are so nice, and I love seeing your work. I hope the input I provide is helpful to you. Okay. So the next one we have, let's see, we got another one here. Oh, this one is by MT, and MT is saying they're struggling with focus, lighting, and posing, and those are all good things to be struggling with, because most of us have those problems. I don't understand the focusing one, though. I got to admit, that one I got to work on with some people. I've got an idea of how to do a course or a little subject on that. But anyway, so they'd like to know how to position their subject so they can catch her eye color brighter. Her eye color subject so I can her eye color brighter. Just having fun. Anyway, I don't know if they're talking about this image or not. So, but what you're trying to do, if you're trying to talk about this image or any image, it's all about lighting, really. And I know it's something you struggle with. It's hard on something like this because you're outdoors, you have a lot of ambient light, you've got white snow, which is reflecting a lot of light, of course, and so it's going to all be very bright, and so there's only one way to really lighten the eyes in this particular case, if this is the image you're talking about, and that would probably be through a little bit of post-processing. You can just touch that up a little bit, brighten that eye up, or what I'll do sometimes is do the opposite. Bring the object down, the subject down, except the eyes, just a little bit, half a stop maybe, not a lot, and that draws your attention to the eyes. Because when you think about it, That's really what people look at. When people look at an image of a person, the first place they go, well, you may not notice this or not, this goes generally to their eyes. So fun picture. I know who this person is, and this is her daughter. And I got to tell you, she is growing up fast. Big, huh? Wow, it's amazing. Because I've seen some pictures of her over the years and the last few years, and she just looks so, like she's getting so big here in this photo. So anyway, thanks, MT, for submitting this. I appreciate it. Okay, a couple more. And I know Sue Ann's got a ton of comments. I don't know why they're not working. It kind of bugs me. Sorry about that, Sue Ann. I thought we tested that ahead of time, and I guess we didn't do a good enough job because it should be working. Let me look at this real quick. Quicker, trigger, overlay. I don't know why it's not working. It should be. So, send to queue. It just keeps picking up. I don't know where that's coming from. That's an old one, isn't it? Oh well. I guess. Thought I should be on. Well, okay. Sorry, I wanted you guys to be able to see the comments from everybody that's about your pictures. They love them. What can I say? Okay. So the next one is, okay. So this one is submitted by OT, and OT is working on being consistent with her photography and editing. Still struggling. Of course, it's always a struggle of trying to be creative and tell a story. But let me tell you something, OT. I have watched your work, and it is definitely improving. So do not be discouraged. You're definitely getting better. I can tell. You can't tell probably because you're so close to it, but I can definitely see the improvement. You know some of the subjects I've seen you work on, the still life and things like that, are definitely getting better. And this is better too. So let's look at this image for a second. This is a great image, and I know you want to do working on your pet photography, and this is a good photo, and there's nothing wrong with this photo at all. I think it works completely. It's interesting they're looking off camera. Most of the time you'd have a pet or the owner or make some kind of squeaky noise to have them look on at the camera. But this one works pretty good. It looks kind of sad. Poor guy or girl. But it's a good shot. Nothing wrong with this at all. And I would think that the owner would love this photo. So yeah, looks good. Again, it looks like it was maybe shot vertically, or that's the way you cropped it. I would probably also like to see if you have one that's shot horizontally, again with more white space over to the right. If you had some there, it wasn't too distracting. And the reason is because the pet's looking off camera, which makes you wonder what they're looking at. So, but good job. Okay, this one here, I wanted to ask you about. I was going to send you an email. The only thing you say is you're working on your creativity, and I don't know if this is a self-portrait. I think it is, and which is fun to see. And I guess someone took a picture of you. I think maybe, I don't know. Anyway. And the last one, which is kind of interesting, is you say you're working on your photography skills with other pets. So, besides dogs, this is an interesting photo. There's, you may be onto something here, believe it or not. There are a lot of people that it seems like that I've run into lately that have chickens. In fact, I think my sister-in-law has some chickens. She just got more of them, in fact. And what she's been doing is taking the eggs and selling them to people at the church for fundraising to help for their building fund. So it's kind of cool to see. Anyway, so beautiful rooster here, or chicken here. I guess it's a rooster. I should know that, don't I? The only thing that I would suggest on this one is it's a little shame that either you might want to consider cropping a little tighter or a little looser, You might want to see their feet on this type of thing. If someone was looking at this as a pet or as something an owner, they may want to see those feet. So be sure and keep that in mind. So one of the things that maybe this will help you guys. Here's something to think about. When you think about when you watch a movie, you learn a lot from watching films, by the way. But what they will typically do is, and you can think the same way in your photography, wide shot. In other words, that's an establishment shot, right? That sets the scene so you know where you are. Okay, otherwise it's disconcerting you as a viewer. So they'll do a wide shot, a medium shot, and then a tight shot. They'll never, the only time they'll go into an extreme tight shot would be a suspense. Think about it, right? It's a horror movie or something. You see the person's face. You don't know who they are. They haven't established who they are. See them in the shadows or whatever. That creates drama. Well, that's the reason they do it. But if they show a wide shot first, then you see the person standing there as a medium shot, and then close up, it's not as startling or as jarring, is it? And that's the same thing with our photography. So think about the same thing. Shoot 3 shots, 3 images of your subject. Wide shot, you can shoot a couple of them, of course, I don't mean just one. Wide shot to kind of set the scene, establishment, what's going on. That may or may not, you may not even use it. A medium shot, if it's a person or something like this. And then a shot like this, or maybe even a little tighter, if you're doing that extreme tight shot. And then that gives you, number one, it gives you 3 options, but it also sets that kind of mentality of I'm setting the scene, I'm showing you who this person is or the subject is, I'm zooming in or I'm moving in a little closer if I can, and then, of course, the tight shot. So you never know which one of those is going to work, but that's a great technique to think about when you're photographing someone or something to set up that ahead of time. So if you guys are, by the way, if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff and the things that I'm talking about here, this is where the Shooting Like an Artist or the STEPS program comes in. This is the thing I've talked about over and over. This is a program I created and it stands for Seeing, Telling, Exposing, Processing, and of course Success. And the reason is what I discovered in my own education with working with people was that the problem was that the way I was taught by the people at Kodak and other schools that I went to were about the technology. And the reason is because everything was manual. Didn't have a choice. Okay? And everything was didn't have a choice. And so as a result, every manual focus, manual cameras, manual everything. But what I realized is that the technology's gotten better and better, that's kind of the last thing you should be learning. In other words, nowadays you can put the camera on auto, right? But if the things I'm talking about tonight, if you don't have these steps in place, it doesn't matter, right? So if the picture can be technically perfect, which is what I see a lot on these groups and forums, the image is technically perfect, but it has no meaning, it has no story. There's no reason of the image. And that's the problem with that. So what I teach is, that's why I flipped it on its head, and I started teaching this a number of years ago, and it's really I find that people learn much faster by doing this first and then working the other way around. An analogy would be, I tell people, it's like if you were trying to teach a teenager to drive, you wouldn't require them to learn to change the oil and start on a manual transmission first before you gave them the rules of the road or the laws or anything like defensive driving, would you? You teach them about that first before you give them instructions on how to drive the car. It's the same thing with photography. So anyway, listen, I hope it's been helpful. I've really enjoyed it as usual. You guys are great. Thank you again very, very much for submitting the photos. I really enjoy seeing your work, and hopefully my input has been helpful, and that it also is something that encourages you guys to just want to do more and be more creative. So again, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Well, actually next week we won't see you, so we'll see you next month. But I have started a new program called Photo Mentor Minutes. You might want to check that out.